Cape Ann Report, and I'm your host, Maureen Aylward. Our topic is the elected leaders, women leaders of Cape Ann. And with me here is Lisa O'Donnell, Essex Selectwoman, Melissa Cox, Councilor at Large in Gloucester, Becky Jaques from Manchester, Selectwoman, and Denise Donnelly, Selectman in Rockport. Thank you for being with me on Cape Ann Report.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having us.
And being patient as we get started. Well, it's really wonderful to have you all here for this collection of elected women leaders. I don't think I've ever seen all of you together before.
No, we haven't ever.
No. Yeah. So this is a wonderful opportunity to get talking about a few things, what it's like to be an elected woman in office. Lisa, I'm going to start with you because you've been in office the longest, and could you just tell us about how long you've been in office and why you ran for office in the first place?
I've been in office for nearly 9 years. My term is up in May, and the reason that I ran it first is I chaired the town building committee and saw an opportunity there when a select board seat was vacant where I could probably make a difference. And a lot of people kind of talked me into it, but I'm really glad I had the opportunity to run, and 3 terms later, it's been great.
Is there one accomplishment that you're really proud of?
One accomplishment,
or many, like an area of accomplishment?
During my time on the board, we actually sort of resolved the whole Canemo Point issue, which was a real sort of sticky, thorny thing, and we worked through that. Town Hall got renovated, and
it's beautiful.
yeah, that's it. We got a bonus floor in it, so it was great. So yeah, and this May we'll be looking for a public safety building, but I think I'll touch on that later when we come to one of our next questions.
That's right. And Denise, you're the youngest of the elected.
In terms of,
being
term
elected.
in office.
That's right. Got to be young at something. So tell me what got you into running?
So it was actually very specific. 2 things. One was our current president had just been elected, and then President Obama said the way to make change is to get involved locally. And I really had never done that because of my work and travel and commuting and all of those things. But with some changes that had taken place in my life, I had the time to start to think about getting involved, and that was one big impetus, was kind of listening to what Obama said, taking that to heart, and feeling like I needed to do something, my personal bias showing, in response to the election of our current president. And the other thing that got me involved was a local issue in Rockport relating to what we now call woodland acres, which is 45 acres of woodland, appropriately, in Pigeon Cove that was going to be developed. And I, along with many, many other people over many years, got involved in getting the town to conserve that land, which it now is. It's now got a conservation restriction and it's public land. So those are the reasons.
That's great. And Becky, what about you? What got you involved?
I have been pretty much involved with the town since my family and I moved there 20 some odd years ago. And I also had some very good neighbors and friends who were involved in town government, both female and male, and very good role models. And this time around, I had some people ask if I might run, and very happily did so.
How long have you been in office?
1 year.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so
You're
so
the
you
youngest.
really are the
baby.
youngest.
1 year, and it's been wonderful. I think everybody works really well together.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
It's a common goal. You're all
Yeah,
working
that's
towards a common
exactly
goal.
it.
It's doing the
Yes.
best thing for the town, and that always provides synergy to a group.
Yeah, right.
Regardless of the
Absolutely.
composition of your board.
Yep.
You're there for the
Exactly.
same reason.
Right.
You would hope.
Well, speaking from our little hamlets.
So Melissa, you've been on the city council for quite a long time in Gloucester.
8 years. I ran initially just because I wanted to give back. I fell in love with the community that I moved into. And turns out I was the first Ward 2 city councilor that was not born in Gloucester, which is a big deal.
Very big.
So, you know, one of the things that I'm proudest in my term so far is that really worked on environmental issues. We passed a poly and plastic bag ban. It came effective in January. And just doing a lot of cleanups and working with DPW to make Gloucester cleaner, I guess.
What was campaigning like?
Horrible.
It was horrible. So being honest, Lisa, what was horrible about it?
You feel like you have to justify and explain yourself for people who doubt your motivations. And that's the hardest thing, is people who think you're doing something for the wrong reasons when actually you're running so that you can volunteer your time to help the town. And it's and they doubt you and suspect you of some ulterior motive, and that's troubling, and then you have to be nice all the time. Right?
Well, there was a lot of head nodding. So any stories here about or experiences in campaigning?
I
Denise?
found campaigning just exhausting. It was just, you know, a big commitment to, in Rockport, we have 5 corners, and stand out at 5 corners every weekend in all kinds of weather. It was early spring. What I enjoyed actually was we have a debate every year. I enjoyed the debate. I found that exhilarating, but I found the actual physical aspect of campaigning exhausting. It was just, it took a lot of emotional and physical energy.
I feel like a door-to-door salesman.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
The product I'm selling is myself.
Yourself,
you know,
yeah.
and
Putting
I'm
yourself
trying
out
to get
there.
people to believe in me as much as I want to do the job and everything. And it was just, it's hard, and sometimes you get a door that is not friendly at all. Last year I was campaigning and I had my niece with me, and she was 1.5 years, so thank God she didn't understand what the lady was saying. But, you know, told me, get off my door, you're a damn Democrat. That, I mean, much harsher language. So, you know, it was just like, I was appalled. And after running 3 elections, that was the first time, and I think that has to do with our current environment that we're in, that was the first time I've ever was treated so poorly. So,
Becky?
Initially, I was running unopposed, and then we had a write-in, which completely, of course, changed the tenor of it. And as you said, Lisa, people questioning my motives for wanting to help, step in and help. And that was made me question a little bit why I was doing it. But then you just kind of have to dig in and say, no, I'm doing this for the right reasons, and just keep going.
Soldier on.
It sounds like there's a need for more civil discourse before an election. Or some kind of coming together or general education around what it's like to go through campaign, what it's like to be elected. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're right, Melissa. I think it has to do with sort of the culture we're living in now, where people are very skeptical. Maybe rightly so, I don't know, but there's just sort of a lack of civility that it's not always there. I have to say, I feel like for the most part, things are pretty civil, and I feel like our board works well together because we have a common goal. But there's always this undercurrent, not always, but there's often an undercurrent of suspicion. You know, what are you really up to? Like, I'm really up to what I just said I'm up to.
I'm really up to helping.
Volunteer. I'm a
Exactly.
volunteer.
And basically, we are volunteers. Like, Gloucester probably gets a bigger paycheck than the towns, but
Bigger than zero?
well, you recently had yours taken away.
Well, it was $100 a month.
Yeah,
so.
which is still nothing. Like you know, there's a lot of time. I was told that this would be a part-time job,
Yeah.
It's not a part-time job.
No.
It is whatever you want to put into it.
Yeah.
And
It's a sponge.
yeah,
Yes,
It's a
yeah.
sponge.
Yeah,
Yes.
it can take as much
Yes.
time as
Literally,
you can
and
give it.
it will take every single bit of your free time that you
Yeah.
have, and you have to push back sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Well, you have to be at events. You have to show up at things,
You have
and
to march in parades.
you have to march in
Like
parades.
marching.
I like the exercise.
That is fun. I agree.
I love marching in the Memorial Day parade. But
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, so I got home at 9 o'clock Monday night, 9 o'clock Tuesday night. You know, there's a meeting I should go to tonight. I have 3 meetings tomorrow. I'm not complaining, but it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Of time.
People don't
It's a lot of
understand.
time for a volunteer position.
Right.
But
And then
it's
to
worth
be
it.
yelled at.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's take a look at the makeup of the different boards, because they're pretty equal in each town. I mean, except for Gloucester. But there's more
bigger.
women on the Gloucester City Council now than there has been in the past.
Correct. When I first got elected, 2012, there were 2 other women on the board, and then one year that I ran, I was the only female. I had the title of the youngest, which was great, and then the next election, Joe Orlando took that away from me, and I teased him, and I was like, now you're the youngest and the prettiest. So, but it was nice because, you know, it really changed the dynamic, and I think that was probably the only term in which I felt outnumbered, but the younger gentlemen on the city council really never treated me like I was a female. I was a colleague. You know, it was the older gentleman that I found that had to do the mansplaining, or, you know, the term honey, or, you know, it was kind of.
It's a
So it's
generational
existing.
thing. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
existing. What about in Manchester? What's the ratio?
Right now, we have 3 women and 2 men, and our chair is stepping down.
A woman.
A woman,
Susan,
yes, Susan Beckman, who's donated so much of her time in myriad ways to the
Large
town.
chunks of her life have gone to Manchester.
Absolutely, and there will be a massive hole.
Is there a woman
But-
running for her spot?
I don't know that anybody's yet taken out papers.
Eli has you have 2 spots open this year.
And Eli's already running. Yes,
Right,
Eli's
right.
is up, and because they go in 3-year increments and they rotate.
Right.
So yeah, Eli is coming up, but he's taking out papers again. But it's I think our board works very well. There's no male, female, male issues at all. And I think there's a great deal of respect. Everybody treats each other very respectfully. And it's been a pleasure to work with all of them.
What's happening in Essex, your board?
We're just 3 on our board since Essex is so small, and now I'm the only woman, but I'm chair, and I've been chair for 4 years. But of my 9 years, 6 of those, when Susan Caviella was on the board with me, there was 2 to 1. So it's pretty balanced, and I know there's a woman who's running unopposed for my seat, so we'll still have a seat on the board.
That's great. And Denise, what's Rockport's board?
We're like Manchester. It's 3 women, 2 men. The chair this term is Sarah Wilkinson, who's I think she's been serving for something like 12 years. So she's young and dynamic, and I feel like we have a great ratio. We have a great balance, and I think it works well. It's nonpartisan, and that's one thing I think is really important.
It's funny you mention that, because when people talk, they'll say, "Oh, you're involved in town politics," and I say, "Well, it's not really politics.
Yeah.
We don't run on a ticket.
Right.
It's town service, and we're all there for the same
Exactly.
reason."
I like
and so
that.
it's
Yeah.
There's not that political element that you find in other levels of government,
Right.
state or federal.
That's such a good way of putting it,
Yeah,
because it really is.
And that's the difference between the towns and the city.
Yep.
So the city of Gloucester, I mean, there was a lot of candidates that ran on, Democrat or Republican, but I mean, and it really showed. Like some of the debates, there were a lot of signage that would indicate one way or the other, and the town committees too for both groups were very dynamic.
And more partisan there.
No, it was the clear division between the Democrats, and like we try to be nonpartisan, but there's definitely some issues that come up.
That's great. Another question is challenges you've found as women leaders in your respective local towns, and what have you ever come up against a challenge? For instance, someone mentioned mansplaining at an event or at Lisa.
Yeah. I'm an engineer by trade, and I've been at it for 30-odd years. And we're working on building projects. And when I talk to building projects, I don't feel like I'm taken as seriously as if I was a man. And I probably know more than most men do about construction. But it's hard to sort of gain that credibility, and it's something I've battled with most of my career. But my clients know what I can offer. But people who don't know my background don't take what I have to offer with the value that I have behind us. So that's it really.
And I do accounting for a living, and I'm chair of budget and finance, and I go through the city budget, millions of dollars, and you know, in the beginning it was an uphill battle, but now, I mean, working with these guys for 8 years, I have the respect of the department heads, work well with the CAO and the CFO, and it's great. I for 2 years I was put on budget and planning and development, and as the only returning person from the budget and finance team from the prior year, it was hard for me to step away from that. And then I was asked to chair again, and I was like, yeah, of course, I'd love it. So it's a lot more work, but it's worth it.
So Denise and Becky, have you ever experienced anything while you're...
In my 1 year, not yet. And I don't get any sense of that being an issue. But again, it's been 1 year.
So looking at some issues, what are some of the things that you've been championing in your work? Is there one particular area? I know that the environment seems to be a key thing running through all of
all communities.
in all communities, but especially here on the coast. Lisa, what's happening in Essex around this, and what have you been doing? In that?
We've been doing a lot with coastal resiliency and studies with National Wildlife just to develop vulnerability plans. And we're looking at marsh restoration, just trying to sort of use green defenses along the coastline to mitigate sea level rise and climate change and the storms that are coming that are much more severe. But that's actually not the big issue in town right now, which is public safety building, which hasn't got anything to do with the environment.
But that's a big thing for you because you're.
It's a huge thing. Our public safety building is so decrepit and so it's just such a poor facility that underserves our volunteer fire department. It's called fire department, but there's no full-time employees, and our police are working out of a trailer in one room. So we're looking at funding that this May, and it's something that's long overdue. People have served on public safety building committees for 30 years. It goes back that far that people were studying when to replace it. And so we're finally there. So we have a vote in May, and we're just trying to get the message out.
Good luck.
Thank you. We need it.
Well, we touched on regionalization when we were all chatting before the show, and let's get into that because regionalization is, what would you describe it as a topic? Your constituents, are they interested in it? Are they, Manchester and Essex have been partnering for a long time, but this is kind of a new conversation, especially for Rockport, and looking at whether or not regionalization is even possible.
Well, go ahead, Lisa.
People are looking at it guardedly. They are saying, yeah, we get the idea. If you want to save money, that's awesome. But do not undermine our community feel.
Right.
We don't want to just turn into one big town. We want to be Essex. We want to stay Essex. Don't take away our Essex feel, But if you can save us money, oh yeah, we're all about that.
But we're
So-
still going to be watching you.
And you're right there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead, Becky.
I was going to say that I think there's also perhaps some confusion as to exactly what regionalization might mean, and with that goes the suspicion of what it might entail.
Yeah, what are you going to do to us?
Right.
So it's schools and it's some municipal services?
Well, the way I try to describe regionalization is it can take a range anywhere from what Manchester and Essex have done with our school system, which is a complete regionalization of a whole town function, to we share a sewer camera with Rockport. That's pretty low level, you know. I mean, so their regionalization can take whatever form shared services is that benefits both towns, and it has to be a win-win for both towns, and they have to save money and or improve services. And unless you're doing one or both, it's a non-starter. So
It sounds like a smart thing to do when you're thinking about it, though.
We did it with Manchester and Rockport with the veteran services. It was very hard to find a veteran service agent for the smaller communities, and at the time we did the regional, I was actually working for the town of Rockport. So you know, it was hard for me to see these veterans coming in looking for assistance and not having a veteran service agent that was responsive enough to respond to them in their time of need. So, you know, we approached the subject with trying to regionalize, and there's actually a lot of state laws that govern what we can regionalize on. So for example, the veteran services, like our communities have to touch. That's probably the reason why we haven't been able to work with Essex on that aspect.
we're actually in a different organization. We're with Ipswich.
You're with-
yeah,
Oh, you're
yeah.
with Ipswich.
we're
but-
in a couple communities further west. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so that's how we were able to do it. I mean, there's definitely state laws as far as services go, such as that. And veteran services is a lot of state funding. So, and it's working out great.
It's been a great success.
Yeah. It really has.
Regionalizing the veteran services has been fantastic. But to my mind, I think one of the things that we need to be thinking about as a region is how we deal with climate resiliency. So the state is doing a lot to make funding available and grants and all of that, but the amount of time and energy and work that goes into writing the grants, identifying the grants, figuring out what you need to target, prioritizing vulnerable areas. I just feel like for the volunteers and the employees who are involved, it's too much.
And it's frequently such a small window of time.
Exactly.
Oh, for
get
the
the
grants,
grants,
to get the
yes.
grants
Yeah.
written and
Yeah.
submitted.
And there's a
and
lot of
everything.
laws that you have to follow. So having an audit of the grant as well is complicated.
So, but I think you said this earlier, Lisa, the storms don't recognize municipal boundaries.
Right.
We have to deal with this
Right.
as a region, and I think we'll be much more successful if we can find a way to work together to address the challenge of climate change because of where we are geographically.
Right.
And we do a good job with mutual aid, say in the fire department. So
ambulance,
regionalizing DPW or the schools. I mean, in my mind, I think it's a benefit. It's the equipment's getting more expensive. To have an employee is getting more expensive. There's a lot of things, and having this one employee that's technically knowledgeable in this one piece of equipment that can be used by all of us. I mean, it's a
On
savings.
the other hand, I will say that I think in order to be a thriving community, there has to be a school. And so I think we have to be very careful. I mean, education, I think, is the bedrock of democracy. And so I'm very invested in making sure that we maintain a presence of a school system. But the way we do it has to be thoughtful, and it's, there's no avoiding the fact that we're aging as a region and as a state
Right.
and a country.
Yeah.
And so we've got to find a way to strike a balance where we maintain our identity as communities, keep the school presence, but also keep it affordable for all of us and high quality.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was when we regionalized with Manchester, one of the big topics of conversation was we have a regional middle high school, and there's a single school that all students attend, but both communities still have their own elementary school.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of discussion back and forth about the economy of having a joint elementary school. There were some other logistical challenges with location, but the overwhelming sentiment in both communities is no, we want our elementary school in our town. And so we each have the district oversees the elementary schools, but we have that community identity, which is really, I think, important to both towns.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the identity piece almost seems to be a little bit separate from the regionalization piece because you you have your own identity. I mean,
Yes.
every town.
Just what I feel like Gloucester's this weird city in the middle of these nice, cute little towns, and like I'm preventing from, regionalizing. But
Well, not necessarily.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's shared services, and
Right.
I mean,
Or
to get you all here to talk about this
Yeah.
is an important piece of just communication and coming together and looking at the topic.
What's complicated with towns and cities is actually state law is different. State laws are
Yes.
different
Yeah.
for towns and cities, which is really unusual in that I just know we ran into a situation where a town is able to offer more than appraised value for a property, but a city cannot. A city cannot pay more than appraised value for a property. So just weird things like that
Yeah.
will complicate sharing, I think, between
Right.
those borders. Yeah, but
Yeah.
not everything. So.
That's great.
You annexed from us, by the way. So
What's that?
Rockport,
I'm sorry.
sort of an ancestral thing happening here at the table. Well, ladies, I want to thank you so much for being on Cape Ann Report.
Thank you.
Lisa
Yeah.
O'Donnell, Melissa Cox, Becky Jaques, and Denise Donnelly. Thank you for sharing your time.
Sure.
Yeah, we
Again,
appreciate
and
you
getting
having
everything.
me.
Thank you for inviting
Thank
us.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks
I
for
want to
having
do
us.
this again. It's great.
Yeah, let's do
But
something
next time
again
we're going to
soon.
put wine in our glasses.
That's right. There's only water. Viewers, thanks so much for tuning in. Check us out on social media. I'm your host, Maureen Aylward. Until the next time on Cape Ann Report, take care.